Oh, I think you got it. That part of it. Thank you. Hey, everybody.
Hi there.
Bruce. Let's see.
Just remember the Girl Scouts are coming in at 4:30.
Yeah, we're gonna start right up. So we're changing date, changing time today. Met through Bruce off, but we're gonna get going here. Hey, JB. Long time no see. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
It's awful hard to hear. So
Hard to hear. Okay. Is that the problem? Is that the...
No, those are the speakers.
Okay.
Should be different now.
Can you hear it now, JB?
yeah, I can. We'll do our best.
Okay. Can everyone else hear okay on Zoom? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our November wastewater meeting, and I think maybe we only have an hour and a half tonight. This room is reserved for the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts tonight at 4:30, so we have to evacuate by then. And I'm just wondering if we jump around on the agenda. I just want to make sure we have enough time for our discussion with JD, and maybe just leave just a 15 minutes at the end to cover most everything else that we have kind of in rapid fire session. I just want to make sure we have enough time to look at the ordinance and the sewer commission documents that JB sent out, and as the first priority, if everyone's okay with that.
I think that makes sense. I could always just send an email update from us if that's helpful, depending on how it goes.
Yeah, we'll have time for maybe a quick. We'll maybe switch over at 4:15 or so. So on that note, JB, do you want to start on the sewer commission or the ordinance? What's your pleasure?
Well, really up to you guys. I think maybe the bylaws are pretty uncomplicated. But basically these two documents together are things that once adopted by the select board give you the authority to manage and govern the wastewater system. The bylaws are really how your governing body will operate. The initial feedback that I'd gotten was we doing okay
Yeah,
connection wise?
Yeah.
I thought you froze, but
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. The initial feedback was to set up a board of sewer commissioners. That's how this is drafted, but there really isn't anything, there is nothing that is saying it has to be this way. This is set up as a as a 5-member board, 2 selectables, so that it isn't a select board meeting when you meet, and 3 appointed members. All the complexity around time on the first page is really to make sure that we can get the group up and running and then have staggered terms after that.
You want us to put that document up to share,
Um,
JB?
might be helpful to everybody, or,
Or do, or
or I
can,
can, I
or
can do that
JD,
here.
may put up.
Okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like sharing is turned on.
Okay, Tori's taking care of that now.
Okay,
Thank you, Tori. JB, just a quick question before we jump into that. We do have the option of the select board being the sewer commission as
you do.
as
That's,
well. And this
that
is
is
this
correct.
is an alternative to that, right?
Absolutely, exactly.
And I'm not sure
and-
from Linda if being our select board chair, well, Alan's not here either. Which preference the select board may have, obviously that would be a select board meeting discussion, but do you have a general sense, Linda?
Yeah, I prefer this method because the select board has a lot of other things to do than to be running this.
Okay,
Um,
makes sense. And the other, and before we jump into this, the other thing is the timing. And obviously, we don't need the ordinance or the commission until right about hookup time, right? So we're at 2026. We had a little sense of urgency because we didn't, if there's a shift in the select board, a town meeting, you know, we wanted to try to get our best ordinance and commission. That's kind of our internal rush, and I don't know if that's even justified or not in my mind. And I don't even know what potential changes might happen there or not. But it seems like it would be easier if it was in place, even if it doesn't kick in. So the effect, say if the completion date of the system is December 2026, is that somewhat accurate, Peter? Ballpark, because of our grant dates and deliverables, that's when the commission and the ordinance would actually officially kick in. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what we kind of talked about before, in terms of being a little bit ahead of the commissioning. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to see what the transition from this committee to a wastewater commission. Is there going to be some overlap where you might have the two groups working simultaneously as the committee is trying to oversee the finishing of the construction, which is our initial task, and the commission is a very different task, and will likely be maybe different people. So will they be an overlap? Will it just be the wastewater committee will be the committee is done and then the commission takes over? I'm just trying to wrap that around my head as well.
I would envision that we would adopt these, but you can say when they become effective, just like state laws. It won't become effective until the system is up and running on the first day or whatever day that's going to be. You know, you can word it differently, but that's what I would envision that in terms of the sewer commission, their job would begin the first day that it's up and running. And we would know who they were, and they'd know what their duties are. This, I think, the ordinance, is a little trickier. I'm not sure how much pushback we'll get on it. I think we should start soon, but that's the same thing. But a lot of things in the ordinance, you know, the people that are connecting, they're gonna wanna know now, you know. It's in black and white, these are the rules, you know, they know that.
So the wastewater, who would make the decisions before the commission doesn't kick in until December 2026? Who would make required hookup on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Because
It might be the
would it
committee.
be the select board?
Guys, I think it would be smart to have it in, to think about having it in place a year before the system is expected to be finished. Because you're gonna start, that's about when we're gonna start. So this time next year, I'd really like to see the select board be moving to have it in place. Because then it's gonna be all the issues around who's connecting voluntarily, who has to be connected by law. And it would give you and the town attorney more time to make all that happen before there's actual system operation and billing. So that would be my recommendation, is that we really have it in force before the end of 25.
When you say it, you mean the ordinance, not the commission.
The ordinance itself, yes. Because that is really going to set your policies, and give you the backstop of law that you need to make sure that the connections are happening where they need to.
JB, what are your thoughts on the commission itself? Because I was thinking December 2026 is too late, Jim, and that we'd
Yeah.
want some overlap probably.
I think maybe 6 months, I agree, Peter, and I think maybe having it in place around June of
Yeah,
26 would be ideal. So that the commission can kind of, if we got the ordinance, call it December of 25, and the commission by June, then there'd be some handoff. We'd have worked out any kinks with the policies. And then the commissioners can be the ones working directly with residents as they're getting hooked up, as work towards billing is going to start.
Give us those dates again, Jimmy.
I would say December of 25 at the latest to actually adopt the ordinance and have it take effect, because you've got, when we back out under Vermont law, you can have appeals, you can have people try to vote it.
You mean
Maybe
the effective date, not
the effective date. Oh,
Okay.
the effective date. Yeah. So even backing out, just in case something goes sideways, have it really ready to start the hearing.
You're frozen, JB.
And then,
It's under in the
I'm
thing.
sorry.
Oh, you froze.
Okay, I'm doing my best. I'm gonna do video. I would say that if we really try to get it adopted towards the end of the summer next year, so that it was in effect through the appeal periods of any kind, or through the petition period before the end of the year, that would be ideal. Then we could, beginning of 26, really work through the segue into the commission, work with the residents, make sure that anybody who, for example, has to connect but doesn't want to, that we've got time to work that through, so that when the system becomes operational, you're really ready to go. The sewer commission's in place. We know how the administrative processes work. We know how the billing is going to.
As far as the commission being in place, well, the timing of the commission versus the committee, that it seems like then the committee might have some sort of regulatory capacity, which we currently do not have now, and that we have to make sure that everybody on the
Yeah.
committee, on the committee in that interim period is okay with that. Because that changes what folks signed up for.
True. And you can, the select board, well, it's a little chicken eggy here. That the ordinance in place, the commission doesn't really have a job, but theoretically, the select board would establish the commission with a resolution when adopting the ordinance. So that's straightforward procedure. That could happen. You could establish right when you the ordinance, and then really have the commission take over from there. And that might not be a bad idea. Then they'd be the one doing things like, okay, who's connecting when? How are we explaining this to people? All the way through 2026, leading up to having the system be operational. If select board is comfortable with that and the people who are going to be the commissioners are comfortable with that, that would be a sort of one step of select board adopts, commission is formed. And then the commission, the authority. It'd be one less thing on the select board's agenda.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to work out some details on when that transition from the committee to the commission takes place and what the role, any different role the committee might be playing in that transition period. And then according to what you put in the draft, JB, you're picking 1-year terms for.
Well, that's sort of to get it started, because usually the absolute best practice for a commission is to have staggered terms so that everybody doesn't turn over at once. The reason for those 1-year terms in the draft is to sort of get things rolling. Once the sewer system's been operating 3 years, then you can go to having the 3 non-select board members, each on a 3-year term, but only one person is up for reappointment each year. And that gives you better continuity.
Right.
It's just one of the fun things in writing commission bylaws is we're a new commission. So how do we do this? So that's on that first page, that's the reason for the 1-year term, like the 1-year term, the 2-year term, the 3-year term. Ultimately, you want each of those commissioners on a 3-year, but only one person is up for renewal each year.
Okay, do we want to put that document up?
Yep, stand by.
You're gonna do that? Okay, thanks, JB.
Okay, so this, upon establishment of this board, that's the one person for 1 year and one person for 2 years. And then thereafter, each person, every year at town meeting, you appoint somebody to a 3-year term. And then, sorry, the group is really, they really just sort of act as the managers.
Is someone getting feedback from someone with no microphone?
There is some feedback, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So any other questions on the bylaws? They're pretty basic.
This is just a question for for Linda. Does 5 members seem like a doable number? Finding 2 members of the select board and then 3 members of the community. I know sometimes we have discussions about being able to fill all commissions.
I don't know, it's hard to tell. It's a good size board though, I think 5's a good size for a board.
Okay,
We should try them anyway, I mean. It could be maybe 3.
My only concern with 3, Linda, is if you, 2 of them are going to be select board. And with 3, you got to have 2 for a quorum. You've got one person probably coming in and out a little bit. And I think if they're only meeting quarterly, maybe you can make it through and have a 5-member board. If they don't have that much to do once you get the system set up. So quarterly meetings should be about as much as you need.
And JB, and just looking at the Article 6 and the decisions, do we need to lay out some? I'm not getting a sense from the bylaw, and maybe it doesn't need to be that specific, but what sort of decisions will the commission be assigned? And do we want to intentionally keep that vague, or do we want to say the commission will make these are the decisions and tasks that the commission will be working on?
Well, see, that's set out by the ordinance. That is set out by the ordinance. What they're in charge of is established in the ordinance. This is just how they operate. So you don't need any more in the bylaws. What they're going to be making decisions on in terms of fees and allocations and such, that is all set out by law.
Okay, so the ordinance will lay that out, but it doesn't need to be included in this bylaw.
That's correct.
And do you have any thoughts on how this is set up and how their meetings will be run and how many select board members on the commission and those type of decisions? That's really good.
Well, I'm pretty pleased with where we went with it. I have a few questions. So like in Article 3, officers, chairman make recommendations to the select board chair. And what do you mean on the agenda for the meeting? Or to get on the agenda? Is that what you're saying? What are we saying?
Yeah, I mean, this is again, Linda, this doesn't all have to be written exactly this way. But the chair is basically your town clerk, often is the one posting the agendas or stating the agendas. So the chair can basically say, here, this is the agenda we want to warn for this meeting.
So are we tweaking this tonight or not?
Up to you.
To match our town.
Up to you. I think
Let's hear your
I
tweets.
will recommend, well, let me just recommend with the challenges of the virtual meeting and then the noise level. If you want to make markups and give it to Tori or me, we can certainly take any input, but don't feel constrained by this. You've got a lot of latitude to make it match how you'd like Wolcott to work.
Susan, you've been jumping out.
No. So in Article 3, Section C, treasurer, you're talking about the treasurer of this group, the sewer commission, will work with the town treasurer to ensure accurate books of financial account are kept for the wastewater system. So I'm a little confused on. Then you say that in 3, the treasurer shall sign all bonds, notes, and other evidence of indebtedness. So what is the town treasurer doing versus the treasurer of this group, the commission?
Okay, well, this is largely up to you. Generally speaking, you know, as an enterprise fund, as a special fund of the
Right.
town, you have to
Yeah.
keep a separate accounting.
Yeah,
So if you want the board to approve procedures, I mean, this just basically authorizes the board to approve procedures for the disbursement of funds. So for example, you get a bill from somebody for inspections. How do you want that warrant bill approved and the warrant issued? Do you want the sewer commission to do that? Do you want the sewer commission to get a report of the town treasurer paying the bills? You know, really, this is whatever has been the best practice for making disbursements, goes here. This is a typical. But if you if at some point you actually did want to borrow against your sewer fees, usually the treasurer of the sewer commission would in fact be the person to sign, for example, something going to the Vermont Bond Bank.
Could our town treasurer be on the commission, maybe? Instead of a select board, we could have one select board member, one treasurer, and then 3 residents.
Yeah, I don't know if you want your treasurer in a voting role on policy or on things like issuance of sewer capacity. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best idea, but you could have your treasurer attend all the meetings.
So in functionally, the administrative work of the treasurer could still be done by the town treasurer. It doesn't need to be a separate person. It's just
Right.
similar to how in some towns, the treasurer for the school district is also the treasurer for the town, but on a much smaller scale. Do I understand that right, JB?
That's
Yeah,
really what,
I
that's
mean-
really what I was getting at, yeah.
So I
Okay.
think that's a conversation that needs to be had with
Yep.
the town treasurer and the select board.
Basically, somebody needs to do functions 2 through 5. And be the point person on your sewer commission for the financial issues. But how you organize that should match what you do for other funds within the town. So like Linda, how does the library pay its bills that are unique to the library? Is it just done through general expenditures or do they have a special fund?
So the library, is a town library.
Yep.
They have trustees that oversee the policies of the library,
Right.
but they ask the town for an appropriation and we pay all the bills. They're approved
Okay.
by the library trustees, I believe,
Okay.
and then they are brought to the treasurer to be paid.
That might be how we structure this. So the sewer commission approves the bills, then they go to the treasurer to be paid.
It's the same as like with the select board, the select board.
Or
approves.
select board. Yep. Yeah. I think if it's working for the library trustees and then send it on to the select board, there's no reason to, I mean, I think it would be better to repeat that process here.
So how are we feeling? Do we want to keep going through the document or? It's. Feeling that this is a draft that we can essentially do, Linda might have some markup and then send it to the select board.
Mhm. It's just a little tweaking, no major changes.
Okay. Folks on Zoom, anybody have comments or thoughts on the bylaws for the commission? Did we shift gears to the ordinance?
Sure, let's get this guy. Now, what I sent you all on the ordinance is not a full-blown ordinance. It is, stand by, let me save this document so we don't escape the sieve between my ears. Notes 11, 18, 24. Wham. Okay. What I had sent was sort of an executive summary of important policies that would be in an ordinance. And that was this document. So the idea is creating a limited service area. Connection is mandatory with some opt-out provisions. No cost to connect during construction. So that means if you sign up before December of 2026, There's no cost to construct. Pete, I wanted to check with you and Jim today on this issue of construction of the building, sewer, and the connection and the septic tank abandonment. Is that in the project cost?
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
what page you on?
Awesome.
Two.
I am on page 2 of 8 of this summary document. I'm gonna highlight it in yellow on the screen here.
We should just make sure it's clear, I think it is, but that it's only during the initial construction.
Right.
So this kind of brings me back to there's going to be this hazy, murky transition period between the committee and the commission and before construction. And can people opt out and go through that process during the construction because they may be hedging their bets and say, I don't want to have to pay to hook up, but I'm going to try to fight this before the construction. So I'm just thinking along those lines, that we're going to get people that are not going to want to hook up and think that their system is sufficient. But they also may not want to pay for the construction. And in my mind, paying for the construction is not only paying the contractor after this thing is built, they're going to have to get a wastewater permit, right, Peter? And have a design, have a state wastewater permit, and pay a contractor. So we're talking about a substantial cost. I don't know what that is. That $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 maybe for hooking into an existing system.
Probably more than that by the time you do the step tank, connect in, have the controls, wire it all up, pay an engineer to get, it's a pretty simple permit, but you still need to get one. So I would say more like $10,000 to $15,000.
So,
Well, actually,
so
probably, sorry, yeah, I'm thinking this through, and it's probably more like 15 at least. So, but we might want to just figure out that messaging between now and whenever, and I can put finer point to that.
So there's obviously, this is heavily incentivized for people to hook up. We're trying to keep the costs low. The construction is free. They don't have to get a design or a wastewater permit. But there still may be resistors. But that in itself is, in my mind, a good way to minimize the opt-outs. And then also in the ordinance, JD, you were talking about, we had discussed, I can't find it right now, that the cost would be, the onus would be on the resident to prove that they meet the opt-out criteria.
That's correct.
And where is that language, JD?
Okay, that is connection to system required in certain circumstances. And then we've got variances or encroachments prohibited. Let's see, where did I put that? Okay, so friends, this is page 1. And this had been the direction that a property could opt out by demonstrating that A and B here, or an alternative to B, apply. So first of all, the principal structure and existing or proposed system are entirely out of the 500-year floodplain and the state mapped river corridor. So if you've got components within the river corridor or the 500-year floodplain, it's not optional. So the second criterion is B, and we're giving people, again, and this was direction. We've got a B and a B prime. You demonstrate that the property can support a fully compliant on-site septic system And that is, I should say is required. And you've got a permit. As an alternative, though, you could, and again, this is not written yet, but the idea of a B prime was that you get a letter from a licensed designer or professional engineer with qualifications to evaluate soil suitability, stating that the property can support a fully compliant replacement system permitted after September of 2007, when the rules were updated.
And just
So-
so for that B prime, does that include lot sizes and setbacks to wells and everything
Yeah.
else? No? Okay,
That's
It-
that's correct.
It would, yeah.
we would.
Yep.
And Peter, any idea, just so we can speak to residents that may pursue the opposite opt-out, how much would B prime cost just to get what we're asking, that letter from a licensed designer or professional engineer? Is that's more like a few $1,000s, or that's still gonna
Yeah.
be?
That's probably what I would say. Usually you're probably gonna need to at least do a few test pits. And then, a site visit by that designer to look around and get a sense of whether or not they can come up with something based on the soils that they've looked at. In some cases, they may need to do some mapping to be able to figure out if there's enough room, and might need to take it a little further. But I think in most cases, you're probably in the $1,000 to $2,000 range.
So just so we know, so if someone wants to pursue the opt-out option, alternative B prime, they're gonna be paying roughly $1,000 to $2,000 just to get that letter that we're asking. And that's the onus is gonna be on them to pay for it. Right? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here.
Well, what about the guy down the street that just put in a septic and recorded his wastewater permit? That doesn't qualify. I mean, in one instant, I mean, he might still be in the floodplain. I have to check that, but that letter from the state with a brand new permitted system doesn't,
Yeah, he spent $30,000 on that, on his new system.
no, he didn't.
He didn't.
No, somebody else.
Well,
That's what I'm thinking.
I
this,
think anyway.
okay, well, this is where if you've got, if you want to write it a little differently, that if somebody has a fully compliant, DEC permitted system within a certain recent time period, you can give them an opt-out. This was
Yeah,
a
that-
recommendation, but if you've got those folks in that situation, it probably not a bad idea. Just
This
hope
was something,
if they are hit again in the future, that's, it's just challenging then. But if the guy just did it,
I was going to chime in. This is something Amy and I have kind of talked about offline, I believe. And we sort of had the same feeling. We kind of had this thought that if somebody had a best fix brand new system that was installed, in the last, I don't know what time frame the committee feels comfortable with, but say the last decade, or maybe since 2007, when the state sort of took over full jurisdiction of on-site wastewater, some sort of reasonable time frame where if you have a brand new system that was permitted, maybe you don't have to connect.
I like that, Peter. Personally, I won't speak for the committee, but I think that we have to be a little flexible on the B prime option. But on the one hand, so we have the carrot, we can, maybe going back to 2007 might be a good option, that language that you just referred to, even more than a decade then, but back to the 2007 date. But that we have the hammer, if you will, that if they don't hook up during construction, they're gonna be paying 15,000, if they don't meet. So we're a little more lenient or flexible on the alternative B prime, but we're less lenient when it comes to they have to pay for the hookup and get the wastewater permit. I'd rather be more lenient on the front end, I guess.
Well, it's just a lot of bureaucracy of having them have this letter when the state has already granted them an approved system. For me, it's like a no-brainer in my mind.
So Peter, what you just mentioned, though, how is that different from number 2 in B prime? The way you worded it sounded a little bit more lenient than what we have there.
Sorry, what is 2, what we're looking at right now?
Demonstrating that the system was permitted after September
Oh,
20,
so the
2007.
difference is whether or not a best fix scenario is acceptable or not, because you can always do a best fix, right? So you don't want folks to say, okay, my system's 35 years old, I don't have a permit for it. It might fail, but I can get myself a permit when I need one. So the question is, do you have a permitted design system that maybe doesn't meet the standards for everyone else moving forward, because there might be some variances. Maybe it's too close to the well, maybe it's too close to the property line. Maybe there were some slight variations in separation of groundwater or something. Does that make sense, Jim?
So Peter, how would you change the language in B prime 1 and 2 based on this discussion?
In so is B prime as an alternative to B?
Yes.
Yeah. I think you add a number 3. A system has a best fix.
You mean a C, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm actually wondering. I think it's really a C. I don't think it's an alternative to B.
I'm not following exactly either. Is our desire that folks with a truly compliant recent system are opting out?
No, I think we're saying non-compliant recent systems that have actually been built.
After 2007,
Yeah.
Yeah, when the rule change went through.
And what do you mean by non-compliant systems, Peter?
Well, yeah, non-compliant is probably not the word we want to use, but we'll say systems built using on-site systems built since 2007. Sorry, I'm gonna have to put a little thought into. I mean, essentially, we're saying systems that are best fixed systems that are already built.
Since 2007.
Thank you, JB. That looks good. I knew you'd get it.
And Linda, do you have a sense of how many might fit into that the new C category?
no, I wouldn't. It'd have
Like,
to-
does Fred's count as this? Like best fix? Yeah.
No, because he's being pumped every week. They're watching him. His is failed.
Okay. Well, it was a best fix then, Right.
Good.
So I just want to avoid that. We're talking about the store. Um, I believe that was a best fix, but it's being having to be pumped out once a week.
I think maybe JB and Peter work out the technical language, but it's a best fix that is not in a state of failure or has not experienced a state of failure. Can we say something like that?
I like that, Seth.
How many letters have we still not gotten back?
We haven't, our most recent effort wasn't very fruitful. I think we got a couple more respondees. We have about 10 that we haven't gotten back that we don't know where they stand.
I'd be curious to see if they have a state permit.
Yeah, that's a good point, Linda. And that's kind of what I was just thinking would be, it might be decent to understand who falls into this bucket.
Right.
If it's since 2007, it should be pretty easy to look at what permits are out there. You know, the store, for example, is pretty excited to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't
I
really,
wouldn't waste my time on the people that want to connect. It's just those last few stragglers.
Yeah. Exactly.
That are out there.
Well, I can put that on our list to find out of those that haven't responded, if any of those have permits and existing systems that fall into this category.
So we'll know how detailed we have to get in this ordinance, you know.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, it's true.
it's really aimed at them at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
JB, so how does what we just changed in that language and adding C to the next three bullets just below D, is that going to change those at all? Where you have the replace the failed system with a fully compliant, not best fix. That language is still going to stay the same.
Again. Okay, well, these are just policy bullet points. Property owners mean one of the three options above may retain an on-site system or replace a fully or
I mean,
those
one of, I
meeting
thought they had to
and
meet
B.
all of them. I thought they.
No, well, Linda, let me give me a chance. There's three. What I'm hearing here is we've got essentially three options. Now it's not. I'm sorry. I'm doing this quickly, and perhaps this isn't the most graceful. But again, this is not the ordinance itself. I had an A and B with an alternative. What I'm hearing, I think, is basically three situations where we don't want to necessarily force people to hook up. With situation 1, 2, or 3 below. These are the opt-outs. 1, fully compliant system. That's the ones that are outside the floodplain and can support a fully compliant system. 2, you're operated what we were just talking about, I think. It's an on-site system built since 2007. It's either fully compliant or a best fix. Most of them are best or on best fix, but it's permitted.
We would define what fully compliant is in the JV somewhere.
But fully, okay, the wastewater rule defines fully compliant and best fix. So we know fully compliant means, no variances from the state rule.
Right,
Or
no,
it's
I
a best.
think this in an appendix or something to this document, just so people know.
Okay, again, Jim, this is not a draft of the ordinance. This doesn't have all the definitions and stuff in it. This is just policies. So this isn't the document that's ultimately going to be the ordinance. Maybe it would be helpful if we took a second and looked at what an ordinance is actually going to have in it. This, again, isn't a draft ordinance. This is just policies that would go into the draft. So
Okay.
let's finish with this idea of when can people opt out? The idea of opting out is situation number one. You've got a system that's fully compliant with DEC rules. Okay, and it's outside the floodplain. Option two, what I think I just heard everyone say, is that you wouldn't require connection. You'd allow an opt-out if people had permitted a system since 2007 that has not been and is not failing. And yes, we define failure. We've got a good definition of that. Option three is you spend the $1 to $2 grand and you get a letter from a licensed designer or engineer saying that you've got a system, that a property that can support a fully compliant replacement system and has been permitted since 2007. And that's similar to two, but and I'd appreciate it if you'd let Peter and me not try to draft the technical language right now over Zoom. Because we can work this through and cite it correctly, but these are the situations in which connection would not be required.
Okay,
Do those track with what we were just discussing?
yes.
Okay, great.
Does there, anybody have thoughts on that, JB's question?
I guess my only question for the committee is just to confirm that it was intentional to do the 500-year floodplain versus the 100-year floodplain. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure the 500-year floodplain is not that much larger than the 100-year in the case of Wolcott. But it's certainly a little less standard to be regulating to a 500-year floodplain.
And I would defer to Peter, you and Amy and our friends at DEC on that question. You're asking 100 versus 500-year floodplain?
We did have a discussion about that back when this document was put together, and the idea was, given the recent history, to be expansive and to really promote connection over leaving these systems in areas that could, even at that sort of more aggressive mapping level.
Right.
So,
But JB, are you saying that we should, but to the point here, should we eliminate 100 then, in parentheses there, and just say 500-year floodplain?
I mean,
Or do we need to say both?
I think obviously the 500 encompasses the 100.
Right.
I think we were making the point here. We're not that the 500 was really going to govern, but yeah, we can take the 100 out.
Because we've seen 3 100-year floods in the last year and a half. Okay, that was my question. Yeah, thank you. So JB, if you could do it relatively quickly, would you?
I sure can.
Show us
Yes.
what an ordinance,
Let's take a tour of the pieces, parts of a wastewater ordinance. It's going to be fun. Wham. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is adapting the draft complete ordinance from that other W town that we don't talk about anymore. And we're going to adapt this to the policies that Wolcott has been establishing. So, but here are the pieces, parts of a wastewater ordinance. We have a table of contents. Then we have general provisions, authority, purpose, etc. Let's just go to that. Okay, general provisions adopted under the authorities in state law. It's the purpose, general provisions. Now yours is going to be a board of sewer commissioners rather than the selectables. This is all the stuff we got to have under chapter 59. Then we have pages and pages of glorious definitions. These all track to chapter 59 and the definitions accepted in the state for things like allocated capacity, building sewer, blah, blah, blah. This all references correctly the DEC and its regulations. So treatment system, properly shredded garbage. Always love that. Slug, it does not mean the kind in your garden. Then we have abbreviations, even more fun. Okay, use of the wastewater system. So this is super important. This actually gives the town explicit governance over any wastewater discharge in the town. So 1 and 2, or number 1 is basically saying that there may not be the discharge of human waste within the town, that you're able to take that action. 2 is treatment is required. You cannot have an occupied structure or use where there's the discharge of human waste where it's not treated. 3 says on-site systems outside of your sewer system have to be compliant with state laws. So, and it says this is important. The owner shall operate and maintain a private wastewater system in a safe and sanitary manner at no expense to the town. So the town is not responsible for paying for the management of independent private wastewater systems. Okay.
Meaning
7, this
not
is
hooked up.
critical. Yeah, anybody not hooked up. Well, I'm in the service area. Nope, you are operating a private wastewater system, and under 3, we aren't paying. Okay. Section 7 is all about connections, and this is where the assorted opt-out provisions would go. And you're very different from what did for the other town that we don't discuss. But this defines your service area. And that means this is important because this means that it's only the select board that can amend the sewer service area. So if you want to expand it, that is its an action. Seven is when is connection mandatory? So this is actually the section of the ordinance that'll need the most surgery based on the policies we've just been discussing. 9 is defining flows. And we've been talking about that, giving studio and smaller units a smaller allocated capacity. And then we get, this is where in here, everything's paid by the town until the system is operating, and then it becomes the expense of the building owner. Separate building sewers. This is, you can't have more than 1 unit discharging through a single building sewer. Pre-existing is preventing people from using substandard septic outlets to their septic tanks. Technical standards. This is all the technical stuff to make sure you've got proper connections. Clean outs, plumbing connections, pipe testing, etc. 3 is capacity allocation, and I think gloriously that Wolcott will be a lot less complicated, but we'll have a couple of things to talk about. 1 is, depending on the final capacity, how much the town would like to reserve for its own uses. So things like the old school building.
That would include all the municipal buildings, JB?
You bet. It's all the municipal buildings and anything you think you might like to have as reserve for municipal purposes. The rest of it, typically it's first come, first served. And, you know, do you really want to try to, given how much more capacity you have than you probably need for the foreseeable future, probably a first come, first serve, keeping it uncomplicated is a good decision. Some of you may remember that Williston and Essex in the 90s and early 2000s went through elaborate procedures to allocate sewer capacity to try to control growth. I think that has gone by the wayside. South Burlington, we had a reservation for city center that actually ended up being a good idea. But I think probably Wolcott can go with a first come, first served.
And that 20% number may be less. Is that correct, Peter?
You may not need, Peter, you tell me how much you think they need.
I would just leave that as a placeholder till we're ready to finalize this and then maybe discuss again.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, capacity allocation. This is kind of important. You want to have people tell you what they're going to do with the sewer capacity on a form. I'll make you a draft form. And then what you don't want is somebody, say the old Bucks Furniture building, you get somebody with an idea and they want to hold a whole bunch of sewer capacity for their idea. Well, it's 3 years, it's 4 years, and they haven't really come to fruition, and somebody else has a good idea. You want to make sure that sewer capacity is not forever and that there are dates and extension procedures so that you don't have people tying up the sewer capacity forever without actually getting something done. So if they're going to go more than a year after an original date of approval, they've got to, under this draft, they have to start paying for that. They got to pay some portion. And then once people do have their permits, then there's a procedure for giving them their final allocation that says, yes, we've approved this. Here you go. This is your permit to connect to the system and start paying your wastewater bills. And this C is the stuff that goes into their permit. A8 is an expiration. It's basically saying if you don't do something within 3 years and you haven't gone for an extension, we're taking that capacity allocation back. And then this is something you might really want to think about is paying a connection fee. Most towns in Vermont and cities give their Board of Sewer Commissioners the ability to say, we're going to give you affordable housing developer, Ballet, Wolcott store. We're going to waive the requirement that you start paying fees for this capacity based on financial hardship. Because, we know that you've had permitting setbacks or you're working on fundraising, so we'll waive that fee. So that's important. You can make an amendment of your application. And yeah, so this is 10 is a lot of process and procedure. And we'd really want to, once we have an idea of who the Board of Sewer Commissioners will be, we'd want to spend some time working on that with them. 11 lets you're not going to have a lot of subdivisions, but you can transfer capacity. If somebody created a couple of lots or a condominium, say the Nazarene Church is 2 lots, this is how that works, to transfer the capacity to a new lot owner. And then we get fees. This is the fun part. So you can, understanding that we want to make it new connections, connections during construction would not be charged, but after that, you would have a sewer connection fee. We're going to have a basis for user charges. This is going to be a little different because you aren't going to have bonded debt, which is great. But your fee is basically going to be operation and maintenance plus some kind of capital reserve to make sure you're replacing pumps and such. So it's a simpler fee than in systems where we've got a portion of bonded debt being paid off and then operation and maintenance on top of that. But you've got to have a basis for charges. This is set up to charge that based on gallon of allocated capacity. Some towns you'll hear charge based on equivalent residential units. Please, let's not do that. I'm undoing it in another city. It's just like people's bills are much more straightforward when you're like, these are how many gallons you're allocated. Rather than you are 0.6 ERUs. What the heck is that? So I really would encourage using fee per gallon. This is again where you are uncomplicated because you don't have bonded debt. So it's just pretty much going to be an operation and maintenance charge. Now, one important policy, and Linda, this is really for select board to begin considering. Do you want to put aside within the sewer fund any kind of dedicated fund for major rehabilitation, maintenance, or upgrades? There is a state limitation on how much you can set aside because they don't want people just accumulating cash for Vegas junkets. So you can do up to 15% of normal O&M. You're not going to have sewer bonds, so up to 15% per year. That's probably in this case a good idea. It raises the rate a little bit, but it also gives you working capital in the event, God forbid, some component needs to be replaced.
Excuse me, JB, we got a good time check here. We got a segue.
Yep.
But
Okay.
I just wanted to
More on billing. Yeah.
So how do we fold in the document we were working on that into the actual ordinance?
Okay. Very simple. I'm going to work on folding in those policies into this and highlight all the stuff that represents your policies in some obnoxious highlight color with annotations. And then we can go through that.
And you had a couple of other
But no,
highlighted sections that we didn't quite get to.
Yep, that's cool.
Page 6, for example, relative to the cost. But I think that's pretty much what we were just covering. So yeah, and I'm just conscious of the timeline that we discussed earlier. If we want to get this a draft to the select board and have them review it, comment on it, and then for us to finalize it before town meeting, if that's still possible, given it's November.
Yeah.
And the warnings, the things that have to happen.
Yeah. I think we can finalize it before town meeting. Now, when you talk about the warnings before town meeting, if town meeting is not voting on this, it doesn't have to be part of the warning. Are you thinking that this would be anything you'd vote on at town meeting?
I guess what I'm getting
Or
at
is it an information item?
Having, well, we have to do a presentation. It's like my understanding, Linda can discuss this further, but there has to be a
Right.
public presentation before it's finalized, before it's effective, and so there is this opportunity for a petition. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay, so
Petition,
I mean, any ordinance you need.
So the petition would, so the warrant, if someone asked, would have to submit a petition before, let's say, by January 20th, if it would make it to town meeting.
But
I guess
okay,
I'm
still
getting at is to
confused
be.
why. But what would the petition be to do? You've got any ordinance adopted by your select board could be petitioned, but that petition happens after a
Right.
public hearing process.
Right.
So why do you think the public hearing has to
just
be
giving-
town meeting?
No, Jim and I will talk it over.
Okay, okay, so JB, that would be great if you, can work your magic in folding what I don't know what we're calling the other documents, which I was calling the ordinance, into the actual ordinance. That would be fantastic. And I think Peter.
Okay, but I'm concerned. Okay, but I am concerned about this town meeting discussion because generally things that go for town meeting have to be, the whole draft would have to be done and select board would have to like it before January.
I'm just trying to say that the timeline won't make it. It won't, there's not enough time.
No, we're not.
No.
Anyone to vote anything at town meeting with this ordinance.
It won't be a town meeting vote. I think
Right.
that's where the confusion is. But we're more concerned about potential turnover on the select board
Yeah, well,
at town meeting.
Okay, but I mean, a presentation of the draft is feasible for sure. But the new select board, whoever that is, will have to then be I mean, you're not going to get this adopted. Do you want this adopted like by the current select board in February? You could do it. It'd be a rush job, but you could do it.
That was, I think, our original intention.
Okay, that's a different animal than, okay. Backing out, you'd need to have a public hearing 30 days before your select board meeting in February, so we'd need a draft. We'd need a first reading at your first January meeting to be safe. I think we could do it.
Sound doable, Linda?
well, the first meeting in January is on January 1st, so at this point, I don't even know when we're gonna meet. We'll decide on Wednesday when we will. Whether we'll make that up or we'll just meet once in the middle of January.
Okay, well, let me know what the dates are.
Yeah,
I mean, if you wanted to do a first reading in January, we can have something ready.
Okay. So I just want to keep us going. JB, that would be fantastic if the starting of that work can happen into folding these two documents in together and with Peter.
Yep.
That one section, I forgot what it was C or D.
Yeah, you bet.
That we're discussing, if that could be finalized, that language, I like the improvement in that section. And I think we have to shift gears and do a quick review of our last meeting minutes and approve those. And we also have to come up with our December date for our next meeting and maybe a quick update from Peter. So just looking at my calendar, we have, if we go back to our third Tuesdays, that would be December 17th. Is everybody, so JB, are we gonna want to look at this one more time with you in December if we're gonna be on this expedited track here? And I'm not sure when your class is over that you're teaching.
Yeah, we would for sure need one and maybe two sort of dedicated meetings.
Okay.
While my class is over 4:00. Yeah, I can do the 17th. That works.
You can do 5 o'clock our time.
Yes, I can do
Okay.
5 to 7. I would suggest though that we try to find some additional time. Probably first week last week of December, everybody's working, but first week of January for sure. Because there's a lot of stuff and it just needs a lot of explaining.
Okay, so do we need to meet before the 17th or the 17th and then early January?
I don't think so. I think that's fine.
So
I
we'll
don't
be
really, yeah,
back to our regular schedule, December 17th at 5 to 7. And then January, maybe we can have a meeting. Are you thinking the week of the 6th or the week of the 1st? Because that's a short week. Essentially, we have New Year's Day days on a Wednesday, and we have the second and third or the following week of the 6th.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not, I'm not doing anything over then. So if you wanted to do like Thursday the 2nd or, um, 3 o'clock, yeah, I could do Friday the 3rd. Actually, I'd rather avoid Friday, but Thursday the 2nd would be fine.
Okay. Folks, okay with that? What we're suggesting is adding another meeting in January, so we're prepared to send this off to the select board before their mid-January meeting, or whenever their first meeting in middle of January. That
Are
works
you
for folks on-
proposing the 2nd at 3 o'clock?
Time, we haven't decided on
Oh.
a time. What are folks thinking time-wise?
I like 3.
3? So we're
That's
talking
good.
about December 17th at 5, and then we're talking about January 2nd at 3. There's an extra
Sure.
meeting.
Yeah, that seems good. It's good here.
Folks on Zoom, real quick. Good.
That works for me.
Bradley's good.
That should work for me.
Okay.
I didn't, it's good for me.
Okay. Okay. All right. Peter, you want to give us a real quick update? The clip notes, so we can send maybe more detailed email?
Yeah,
follow-up?
sure. We we have existing conditions plan done, and we're starting to work on the design. We're working especially hard with V-Trans to try to wrap up the plans and specs that will get rolled into their bridge project. We have a closeout meeting with V-Trans for our 1111 permit this week. I already mentioned we've only had a few more responses from landowners, but I think, maybe next meeting we want to chat about what other strategies we can use to reach out to other folks. But in the meantime, we can just keep moving along with our design. We have an updated Gantt chart that Amy prepared, and we're going to have an internal meeting later this week just to kind of go through some of the pinch points and strategize how to make sure we keep it on schedule. I suspect after that we can provide kind of a rolled up version of that Gantt chart to the committee to take a look at. I think that's the gist of it. How's that for 30 seconds?
That's great, Peter. Thank you for being brief. Do you mean the Gantt chart for the 30%?
No, this is a total project
Okay.
Gantt chart. Yep.
So we've met recently with the people on the bridge.
Yes.
about the bridge. The select board has to sign, a utilities agreement saying is that covered under the grant?
Yeah, I saw your email there. I didn't get a chance to really take a close look at that, but I think, yes, I think they're just talking about the money that seemed pretty clearly payable from ARPA to V-Trans. Right, Emily?
Any additional costs, for the bridge to bring the force main over?
Yeah, that's the agreement they were trying to.
It's our expense, and I just want to make sure that I can tell the select board that it's covered under the grants, Emily.
I think it's safe to say that would be great if Emily could confirm too.
Emily?
Hi, sorry, I missed the last part. It cut out on me.
So, Peter and I and Tori, other people met with the bridge engineers last week or so. Anyway, they sent a utility agreement to the town asking for signatures saying that the town will pay for any of the costs associated with bringing the force main over. I am asking you to confirm that those costs will be covered under the grant.
Yes, that's my understanding, but I will double, triple check.
Right, because I have to tell the select board something on Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock.
Okay. I'll get with Lynette tomorrow and double check everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Tori's gonna quickly put up last meeting minutes that we have to approve for folks to take a look, quick look. And I just, while Tori's doing that, I'd just say that, I was asked to do a presentation at Sterling College last week and, about the wastewater project. Craftsbury is interested in doing a similar project, the town of Craftsbury, and, they asked that I can meet with the select board over there at some point to talk about our project. And also, the town of Fairleigh has contacted me, and they're very interested in a project over there too. So just thought I'd give you that heads up. And also Hardwick, East Hardwick. Three towns looking at it, looking at us. Okay. Oh, do you have to unshare and share and all that?
I think you should all see the minutes now.
See that on Zoom? And while we're reviewing that, Peter, with that the 30% design, are we still on track by end of year for that?
Yeah, I would say we are. Yep.
Okay. Grant funding, any quick updates on grant funding?
I signed the, whatever, I accepted it online.
Linda accepted the Northern Borders grant online.
Okay, so we did accept it. Okay. Any thoughts on the minutes? Do we have a motion? Anyone on Zoom? Linda stepped out for a second.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Minutes are approved. Are they here?
Yeah, they're waiting out.
Oh, our Girl Scouts are here, so we have to evacuate the room. I'm sorry, it was a little bit of a rushed meeting. I think I'm feeling good where we're at, JB, and on the commission and the ordinance. And Peter, where we're at with Stone and the survey and design, permitting stuff, bridge. We're right on track, and but we're gonna have a little intense rush here before the end of the year. And thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
we'll see you in December, and then again in early January.
Great. I'll be in touch with some exciting reading for insomniacs.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Great to see everybody. Take
Hi,
care.
everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.